Okay, very good. I was saying that I have been in clinical practice for 25 years. I retired from clinical practice 4 years ago. I am still very much involved and active in the health and wellness arena, but from a different perspective. Part of which is what I will be sharing with you this evening. Uh, I am quite passionate about this area, and because I am so passionate about it, I have found myself in recent times coming to a place where um, I've been questioning more and more the approach that we use in health and wellness. We have seen a progressive advancement in healthcare and technologies. We've gone from the allopathic to the naturopathic to the energetic, and we are making strides and we are moving forward. But I've been asking the question to myself more and more recently, if the approaches that we are taking is correct and we are advancing, why is lifestyle diseases increasing every year? Why is it becoming more and more of a global pandemic? It seems like we're missing something. Now, regardless of what modality of healthcare we may utilize, or if you're on here and you're a practitioner, whether you're a medical doctor, a holistic practitioner of some type, it's all beneficial, it's all useful, it's all needed, and it can all help and save lives. But when it comes to health and healing and what that really represents, are we really reaching the mark? And what is the standard that we should be shooting for? What is our standard that we should be aiming for, that we have to look to, that we should get to with what we're doing? And so, in examining these things and in my own process of personal development, in my own research and my ongoing studies, I have come to a point where I some of what I'm going to share with you this evening takes us to the very foundation. It takes us to the very root of true health and healing. And so when I entitled in Unveiling the Truth and Future of Health and Healing, it is what I recognize to be the fundamental truth about it. And it's what lies within the future of what health and healing is going to be about. Whether it happens in our generation or generations to come as a accepted practice, that is to be seen. But the principles that I'm going to share, I am sure most of us are familiar with them, even though we may not necessarily put them into practice. And so we need to have a standard by which we are going to begin with. And so I want to start by looking at that, to set a standard of what we must be aiming for. Because trying to resolve humanity's issues, whether it's sickness, relationship conflicts, or societal breakdowns, without addressing our authentic nature is like trying to fix a malfunctioning device without understanding how it was designed to function. And that's how we've been kind of going about it in the healthcare industry. Just as every system has an inherent blueprint that governs its optimal function, humanity has a divine blueprint. Our authentic nature as spiritual beings are meant to live in alignment with the flow of life's creative order. When we function outside of our original design, we experience dis-ease, whether physically, emotionally, relationally, or societally. Now, within the context of this is all of our problems, not just sickness and disease, but getting back to our authentic nature. And most people that I speak with and interact with accept that we are three-dimensional beings and our essential nature is spiritual, that we are spiritual beings in physical form executing life in this three-dimensional reality. But how do we really understand that? Because if our essential nature, if our true divine blueprint is of a spiritual nature, then everything that we should be executing in life, be it as it pertains to any aspect of well being, sickness, relationships, financial success, um, whatever it may be, it should not be without integration of our essential nature in it. And so, because that has been, for a large part, a missing piece of the equation, is why I have determined that not just in healthcare, as it pertains to health and disease, but in every other aspect of our lives, we have been falling short. And so, this is the standard that we are going to be laying down, that we are going to be aiming for, and we're going to see our very best results. Now, if we are to accept and we are to proceed with the understanding that our essential nature is divine, it is spiritual, then we also need to understand how we are meant to function within the context of the world that we are interacting with. And there are just a few principles that I want to lay out, and I'm just creating the context. And after that, I'm going to create a framework of understanding. And then we're going to look at what the real problem is as it relates to what's causing sickness and disease and the solution of how we can overcome it. That's the pathway that we're going. And so these are some principles that I'm going to mention, and they're all teachings in and of themselves. And so what I'm really packing together is a year of workshops into approximately 90 minutes this evening. And workshops will be coming after July, and those workshops are all going to be free workshops to attend. But let us understand how we interact with this world that we live in, and we're going to see how the pieces are going to all fit. We're going to connect the dots and create a picture of understanding that we would know how to go about and live far more effectively than we might have been doing. So, number one, the creation is not a finished event, it's an eternal unfolding of divine order. And I'm saying that because some of us in my conversation, we think that creation, the universe, when it was created, it was a fixed and done event. It's not a done event. It is continually unfolding and it never stops. It's continually expanding, it's continually being created. Now, number two, from the microcosm to macrocosm, from micro to macro, the universe is built on a polarity of opposites. You'll see where I'm going with this. Now, that's important because if you remove opposites from creation, it would cease to exist. Creation is built on a polarity of opposites. Why is this important? Is because generally in our world, when things are polarized and they're opposite and the characteristics are different, we tend to have conflicts, we tend to have differences, we tend to have things that are contrary. But the polarity of opposites, be it day and night, hot and cold, north and south, positive and negative in whatever way, it's always designed to function in unified harmony as one. That's important because you and I today, as individuals, and the world at large, and everything in creation is designed by nature to function and coexist in unified harmony. But that's not the way it is. And that's because we are off course in our understanding and perspective of how it all supposed to work. Opposites coexist in harmony only when within the creative order of the universe, and we'll see how that works. The creative order of the universe is an infinite flow from invisible into visible, from formless to form, from inside out. It's the science called involution. This is important for us to understand how sickness and disease develops and how we can overcome every sickness and every disease. This is the principle. The creative order of the universe is an infinite, it never stops flowing from invisible to visible. Now, because of involution, the flow of energy, that is the divine essence, what we'll call it energy, into matter, the universe is one seamless, unified system. If we understand that we as beings in a three-dimensional world in this universe, and the very structure of the universe is designed to function in unified harmony, then if we are out of sync with that, naturally there's going to be conflict. Now, so the key is for us to be able to live in this creative order, this divine flow of harmony. That's a principle that we're laying down in terms of creating our context. As it pertains to you and I, personal wholeness, we are just a microcosm of the macrocosm of the universe. We are designed to function as a unified whole as well, body, soul, and spirit. When I say soul, I'm speaking the aspects of mind and heart. It can be also called conscious and subconscious, but soul is the aspects of the mind and the heart, and it based on my understanding of things. So personal wholeness, body, soul, and spirit are designed to function as one unified, seamless whole. That is generally accepted and agreed upon in holistic healthcare, but the mechanism or the mechanics of how that becomes true is something that may not be clear. Now, for that to be clear is that the creative order of life must flow in its correct order, which is from invisible into visible, from inner to outer. That is the natural order. Now, when we can find that harmonious balance of wholeness, healing is 100% complete. What I'm saying is that this is where what they call spontaneous healing happens. Tens of thousands of cases all over the world, medically documented, and you can research that if you choose to, where people with incurable and terminal illnesses completely recover without any kind of medical intervention or without any specific type of remedies that are targeted for their condition. And it happened because they came back to a place of this type of alignment. And of course, that's a whole conversation in itself. But when we can restore this alignment, healing is natural. Personal wholeness is not found in restoring our lives, but in realizing that nothing was ever truly missing. You and I are completely whole right now. Nothing is missing in our lives, and everything is available to us. Life is already abundant. Nothing is lacking. We can have the optimally best life that we can have because, and all that we need to make that happen, we are already equipped with it. Nothing is missing. As it pertains to our topic this evening of health and healing, we already possess all that is required to heal any disease, regardless of what it is. And it's not whether it is nothing is missing. So it is a perception that we are shifting our perspective and developing a broader and a more elevated perception of ourselves and who we are, and looking at our true identity, because that is at the very foundation of it. Wholeness is our highest and most natural state of being. So we are talking about if we can return, not look for and not discover, but simply return to our most authentic and our most natural state of being. If we can understand that pathway, that course that we can take to return to our true essential nature. I'm not talking religious or religion of any type. I'm talking about divine design. If we can return to that, not only sickness and disease, but we will see everything else in our lives begin to change. So with that context, let me now shift to looking at where we're going. We're going to be talking about understanding health from a new perspective, or from a broader and deeper perspective. And we're also going to be talking about a technology that helps to support us returning back to our highest state of being. And as it relates to technology, I wanted to share this technology that was invented and that came about in the 1800s, the light bulb, which was first installed into homes in the 1800s. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because although it was a superior shift from what people were accustomed to, which was just open flames, oil lamps, candles, fires outside, and so on, although it was a completely new shift, it took more than a generation for it to be culturally accepted because people perceived it as just another option to what already exists. The technology that I'm going to talk about later, which helps to support us returning to our highest state of being, it can easily be perceived the same way as just another option to what currently exists. And that is because our mindsets are locked in to a paradigm of understanding health that is a little bit shallow. We think that disease is something that happens to us, but it's really not something that happens to us. And that will become clearer as we go along. And so we need to start shifting our perception of understanding that the outcome of an illness in our body is because of losing our place. Because think about it, if we are in our highest state of being whole, healing naturally happens, as is evidenced by spontaneous healing, as is evidenced on a smaller scale by things like the placebo effect, where we have within us the capacity to heal and regenerate just by the power of our minds, just by the power of belief, just by a new perspective on things. Now that is inherent to every human being. And so we're looking at proper alignment. But why I am mentioning Thomas Edison is not just because of one, the technology and how it takes us a while to shift from one perspective to another. But I want to mention him because of this quote that he said, that the doctor of the future will give no medicine, but will interest his patients in the care of the human frame, in diet, and in the cause and the prevention of disease. And so I want to highlight the first and the last sentence where he says, the doctor of the future will give no medicine. Now, that was a very insightful statement that he made on his part back in the 1800s. But the doctor of the future indeed will have no need to give what we consider to be medicine in terms of taking pills and potions of various types to influence biological change within the body. Now, we are going to come to a point one day where that is not going to be needed. Now, we are already in part or there where we are using energetic forms of medicine to be able to influence biological change, where we're not using chemical drugs. So we do have medicine-less therapies right now. But beyond that, we are going to come to a point where, as human beings, when we come to fully recognize and understand who we are and the potential that we have, that we possess, and we learn the rudiments of how to unlock that, there will be no need for medicine, because the paradigm of thinking that you need something to affect biological change externally to who you are, that thinking is going to become more and more prevalent, and that understanding is going to take us to a place, is going to take humanity in the future to a place where we are going to be functioning far different than we are today. So understanding the cause of disease, which will also help us to understand how to prevent it, because we're talking about lifestyle diseases, which account for 80% of what people go to doctors' offices and are in hospitals for. We want to now change our style of living so that 75% of the people on this planet die from lifestyle disease, according to the World Health Organization. We want to be able to change that. And the numbers have been increasing all the time, despite our advancements in medicine and in technology. And so we're looking at a paradigm shift in understanding how we're going to approach this. Now, as it pertains to a future without medicine, and as it pertains to the cause and the prevention of disease, I want to now introduce you to another individual who is a genius in mind. This is a modern day individual, a very successful individual. His name is Jay Dhaliwal. He has created a technology which I am going to talk about, but it supports us returning to that place of wholeness. Now, that is very unique. Now, it is a medicine-less technology. No medicines, no frequencies, no substances, no equipment, no devices. Nothing of that nature is needed, but it interfaces with the human system so seamlessly that it helps us to bridge the gap of returning to a life of wholeness, our highest state of being. I'll talk about that later on. Come back to that. Let me also now tell you about two other individuals who have gone, which all of us, I'm sure, know: Albert Einstein and Nikola Tesla. The reason why I bring them up is because these two statements that they have made holds the key to understanding how we interact with the world that we live in as human beings that's supposed to function whole and complete, just as the universe is designed. They have made statements that gives us the key to unlock that. It's also the keys that unlock the technology I'm going to tell you about a little bit later. Albert Einstein, when he said matter and energy are two forms of the same thing, that's very powerful. And his equation, E equals mc squared, which the whole world knows about, talks about how if you take energy and if you take matter and you vibrate it at twice the speed of light, it disintegrates into just energy. It just disappears. And if you slow down the rate of its vibration, it is going to condense right back into matter, showing that matter and energy are two forms of the same thing. Why is that? Why does that matter? Because we live in a material world and we are seeing matter, but what it's made up of is what cannot be seen. And it's the same for our bodies. We have a physical body, that's matter, but we are spiritual beings, that's energetic. And it's coexisting as one. And so energy and matter are two forms of the same thing. If we can wrap our minds around that, we can start to understand the seamless unity of how things are supposed to function, because everything flows from invisible into visible, from formless into form. And Einstein was able to prove it with his experiments. Nikola Tesla, who existed around the same period, he said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. He's saying the same thing. If you take energy and you change its vibration, you will change its form. And based on the speed and the rate at which it vibrates, you will change its own form, but you will change its function as well. Understand that. Now, this has far-reaching implications, which we can't even get into now, but this is just the principle that governs where we are going with this. So energy, that is the creative source of existence that governs and organizes all things in creation. It is the formless unfolding through its organizing principle, manifesting into form. Now, I'm also this is also have our spiritual connotations, because everything I'm going to be saying this evening is validated both spiritually principles as well as scientific principles. Frequency refers to the speed at which energy vibrates. It determines the characteristics and effects. The higher the frequency, the greater harmony, because the higher the frequency, the more it stays in its original state. In other words, the higher the frequency, not just the greater harmony, but the more it's in its spiritual state. The lower the frequency, the more dense and the more chaotic. These are all things you can research for yourself. Vibration, energy frequency vibration, is the movement of energy. Everything in existence is in a constant state of vibration. This determines its form, function, and interaction. You and I, we are in a state of vibration. We are energetic vibrational beings, constantly vibrating. And the frequencies that we are emitting in our function, it's coming from our thoughts. Every thought is a frequency. Every emotion is a frequency. Every beat of the heart is a frequency. Every word that comes out of our mouth is a frequency. All measurable frequencies, measurable in hertz, Hertz. It's all, technology has come to a place where we can measure all these frequencies now. Every cell in the body has its own frequency. Every organ has its own frequency. A sick cell has a different frequency to a healthy cell. But everything in creation runs and functions based on the energetic frequency and vibration that it has. Everything. Now remember the principle that of the creative order, which is perpetual. It never stops. It is flowing from the inside out. This is why when we put a seed in the ground, you can break that seed open and all you will see is more matter inside the seed. But if that seed was placed into the ground, there is a divine intelligence that permeates the universe. It's omnipresent. But when you put it in the ground in the right environment, a shoot pushes out. And it pushes up above the ground and it begins an unfolding process, a continuum of growth. Leaves come out. But it's not different stages of growth, it is one continuous flow. And that never stops, even when it becomes a tree and bears fruit. It goes through seasons, it changes, it bears more fruit. It's the same thing with the human body. From the first seed of an egg cell, the same process happens. There's an intelligence that orchestrated and organized the unfolding process in the womb to where we are today, and that never stops. Millions of cells are dying every minute. Millions of cells are coming back every minute. There's a constant ebb and flow. It is reflected in the breath in and out, the heartbeat in and out. It's a constant vibration and flow of life, and it's always only in one direction, from inside out, from invisible into visible. Energy is the essence. Frequency determines the expression, and vibration is how it interacts with reality. This, as we're going to keep it in the context of our health and healing, but it pertains to everything in our lives and all our interactions with life. So the divine creative order, again, is the movement from invisible into visible, spiritual into physical, eternal into temporal, from pure being into manifested experience. So what I'm saying is that even though our focus is health and healing today, but when we understand the principles by which this works, anything that you want to achieve in your life, whatsoever things you desire, however you want your life to be, you have within you the potential to create it if you understand the principles that we're talking about thus far. So to create an analogy, look at our life like a tree. A tree, it grows, and a tree is known by its fruit. The tree has branches. And in this analogy, we can call it our authentic identity, our health, our financial security, our relationships, our spiritual growth, whatever aspects it is of our lives. And how we are conditioned to think about it, health just being one branch of the tree, we are conditioned to think of them as all separate branches. If I have a problem in my relationships, I may go and seek help to improve that. I may seek help to improve my financial position. I may want to try to discover my purpose, and I may attend different courses. We can do different things to try to improve our life based on which branch needs help. But all the branches are nourished by the same roots. And that's how we need to understand this, is that our roots planted in the ground, that the very roots, which is our spiritual nature, when it is planted in its source, the soil, that soil is that omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent, energetic source. You can call it spirit, light, love. You can call it energy, frequency, vibration. But we're leaving it. Let's keep it in a spiritually scientific language this evening. But that is the source from which we came. And I want us to understand that we, as spiritual beings, we are the energy, the nature of our spirituality is not different from the source from which we came. We are just embodied in a physical form. When we stay attached to our source, remember it's flowing from invisible into visible. When we stay attached to our source, our spiritual nature, flowing into our heart and mind, into our conscious awareness, into how we experience this journey we call life, when it's all flowing in the right direction, when it comes from the right source and it flows from the inside out, every branch on the tree is going to bear the best fruit. This is what we may call the abundant life. This is whole living. This is defined by peace. When our life and our roots are planted in its source as spiritual beings, the very essence and qualities and nature that comes up through that nourishes, because remember, it flows one way. Everything works for us. There is no sickness, there is no disease. It's not possible for it to happen because everything that flows from spirit is whole, it's complete, it's abundant. There is no lack, there is no limitation. When we live in this state, we have no concerns about how life is going to work out. When we live in this state, there is no concept in our minds of fear, worry, anxiety, and how life will turn out. That does not even compute in our minds because we are grounded in the sufficiency of our spiritual essence, and we live completely in peace because we are grounded in the faith of the flow of life. Our trust is in this unfolding that never fails. And so when we are grounded in our true essence of being, this is a perspective that cannot be known through knowledge. It can only be experienced because it's a dimensional shift in being. But once we begin to return back to letting our lives be governed by our true essence of being, this is the true essence of where spontaneous healing comes from. There is a book that if you is worth reading, a book called Cure by Dr. Jeffrey Rittiger. He's a medical doctor, a professor, a psychologist. He teaches at Harvard Medical School, but he wrote a book called Cure where he studied hundreds of patients who went through this experience of spontaneous healing. And it's interesting that in his book, as he laid the research out, he said that he has found after 20 years of researching all these cases, there are 4 pillars that leads to spontaneous healing. And what I found so interesting is that he said the number 1 pillar upon which all the rest is that their sense of identity. And I found that so interesting that these people, because of their terminal illnesses, came to a place of re-examining life and what matters and reprioritizing what is important in their life. And they started on a process of journey that brought them back on the inside to rediscovering the true essence of their being. And in that process of discovery, in that process of alignment, their diseases went away. Spontaneous healing. This is our true essence here. But it's not just the healing of the body. That's natural when there is order. That's natural when there is balance. That's natural when everything is in homeostasis and in divine order. But more than our bodies, our relationships are the best. There's no lack or limitation. There's no financial struggle in our lives. Everything works well. This is our standard. This is where we're going for. But what we have been enculturated and conditioned by this world to do is to invert that. And what we have is most of the planet, most of humanity experience a limited life. We are so conditioned into this, we are so used to this, this has become such a norm that we think that what I just spoke about the whole life, that seems foreign, but that's really our natural state of being. But we have been conditioned into this limited life, this fractured way of living. And why? Because the soil which we plant our roots in, conditioned by this world, inverts the flow of life. Rather than from inside out, it's now flowing from the outside in. So now we are paddling upstream. We are now going against the flow. We are now living in resistance to the natural flow. All of our qualities, our aspirations, our sense of identity, all the things that we hold to value is determined by our external reality because we've been conditioned that way. And so inadvertently, we invert the natural flow of life to go from inside out to now outside in. And this brings nothing but a life of struggle. It brings sickness and disease. Sickness and disease, understand, is just an outcome of this inversion. Just like struggling with relationships, struggling with finances, struggling with meaning and value in life, struggling to get ahead, we striving. That's not how life is meant to be. Life is designed to flow almost effortlessly into everything that means and has value for us, almost without effort. So, but because we have inverted the flow and it's now flowing from outside in, we take the values from outside. That's why our sense of well-being is very much determined on the external world. If things are not going outside, going the way we want them to go, if people are not treating us the way, if circumstances around us are not ideal, we don't feel good, we feel down, we feel depressed. Our quality of life is determined by our external reality because it flows from outside in. It creates a fracture. And when life flows from the outside in, our true spiritual essence, our true nature becomes so obscured that even though we may accept it's a reality, we have no conceptual awareness of it. Really, we don't. But this is because our roots are now planted in a soil that is of a different quality. And so all it takes is for us to plant, to change that, to till the soil and let our roots go back into this original place. This is the difference between a life of peace and a life of stress. This is a life of stress. A fractured life is stress is the normal state for the majority of people on this planet. It is so normal that there are a lot of people I talk to that are stressed and they think, I am not stressed. I don't have any stress. And they are completely oblivious to the amount of stress that they really have because this is so normal for us. But this is what we want to change. We want to flip it. We need to restore the flow from inside out. This is the key to health and to healing of any and every disease. This is validated by science. And again, let me say, this is not about religion. This is about our divine design of who we really are. And the principles are all validated there. The question is, how do we restore the flow of life to come from inside out? Because that's a bridge that's not necessarily easy to cross. It's not hard in that we have the capacity to, but it is a mindset and a conditioning that has to be broken. And we'll see how that is even possible. Stress is the number one cause of disease on this planet. And stress is the disposition when we invert the normal flow of life to go from inside out to outside in. Stress is the natural outcome of it. And all the authorities, the biggest of the authorities on the planet, all say the same thing, that 90% of doctors' visits are stress related. Stress is the basic cause of 75 to 90% of diseases. These are all from major authorities. 90% of diseases is caused by stress, thought, and beliefs. The World Health Organization, the American Psychological Association, the Mental Health Foundation in Europe, between 60 to 80% of people in modern societies live in a chronic or recurring state of stress. Why? We just say that this is life, that life is tough, life is hard, look at how life is, and so life is stressful. That's not the cause, that's not the root of it. That's not, what is stress? Challenges of life are not the source of stress. It doesn't matter if you lose your job. It doesn't matter if there's no money in the bank. That's not the source of stress. Challenges in life are not the source of stress, but they are expressions of life unfolding according to divine law for our growth and our evolution. That's what really we are calling stress, but that's the real view of it. Stress is how we respond to challenges based on our internal resistance that arises when perception of life is not aligned with the truth of who we are. When that is not, we experience what we call stress. Stress is not a condition of illness, but is a signal to be understood. It is the inner indicator revealing misalignment between our present state and our inherent nature of peace, clarity, and trust in the divine order of life. In essence, stress is not something we suppress or manage. People suppress stress. There are all kinds of things about how to manage stress. Stress is not to be managed. It's not a disease. It is an outcome of imbalance and misalignment. And our perception has to shift if we're going to really make the difference. It is something to observe, learn from, and allow it to guide us back to our inner state of wholeness. When we go through stress, when our thoughts are crazy and we can't control it, when our emotions are flying off the handle and we can't, they're all signs that how misaligned. To the degree that we are affected, to that degree, we are out of alignment. Going to taking stress management classes and taking different pills for anxiety, while they may give us relief or some measure of help, it never goes away. It will only completely go away when we return to the natural flow and order of the design of life, which is from the inside out. We have to go back to our authentic identity. We have to go. So stress, this is what stress looks like. When we think one thing and we say another, it's an unstable concept of self. I want us to see how this points to one, it points to our identity. It points to our inner sense of self and identity. A disconnect between our inner truth and our outer expression. Stress is you feel one thing, but you do another. People's thoughts and opinions of you matter more than your own. When you're not true to yourself, you don't say what you mean, you don't mean what you say. Overcommitment and people pleasing, saying yes at the expense of your truth or well-being. Saying yes when you really prefer to say no. Lack of self-worth, lack of integrity and self-expression. See, This is all pointing to the loss of our sense of self. But people think stress is, oh, life is stressful because of things that's going on externally. That's just life happening. And that's just life happening according to divine law for growth and evolution. That's normal. That's the process. That's the process of growth. Stress is our response, our internal response. These are all signs that our life is more ego-driven, where the external conditions of life determine our sense of self, our sense of worth, our sense of value, our sense of importance. People need to validate us. We need to be recognized. We need external input for us to feel the best about ourselves because we've lost our self-sovereignty. We've lost sight. It's completely obscured. But yet we will say, I'm a spiritual being living in a physical form, but we have no conceptual understanding of it. But when we do get to understand it, and the rudiments of this will be in the workshops, when we do come to understand it, we're going to get to see how we can step our way and invert the flow and turn the boat around. And instead of going against the current, instead of paddling upstream, we can go with the flow and watch how life works. Because life is designed to work for us and never against us. That's the design of life by the very designer of life. That's how it works. So we want to be able to know how to do that. But when we have lost this, our true sense of self, it creates a fracture between our inner being, our inner well-being, and our outer experience of life, and that conflict between our true essence of being and a sense of self that we've identified with the world, that conflict, that disparity, that dissonance, that disharmony, that's what we call stress, is an inner response. It's not what life is presenting, it's how we are responding internally. Now, what bridges this as it pertains to bringing it home to health and wellness, or health and healing, we have to look at the central nervous system, because the central nervous system, which is the brain and the nervous system throughout the body, that acts as the bridge between our conscious awareness, or our mind and our heart, and the body. The symptoms express in the body, but the body is expressing those imbalances. The body is expressing the resistance to the flow. So imagine you have a river that's designed to flow one way and you're going against the flow. There's going to be resistance. That's what stress is. Stress is the resistance against the natural flow. So the nervous system acts as a bridge between that inner flow of mind and heart coming from our essence of spirit, and how the body functions, the bridge between that invisible and visible, the bridge between the spirit and the body, between energy and matter, the bridge as it relates to our physical well-being is the central nervous system. That is the apparatus that orchestrates, that calibrates, that processes, that organizes everything that goes from unseen into seen, from energy into matter as it relates to our physical life on this earth. Now, let's break it down so we can get a little bit closer. The central nervous system, it extends to the autonomic nervous system. Don't get caught up. You could always get the video and go over this. But the autonomic nervous system controls all bodily functions. The central nervous system is the whole system, but it extends into something called the autonomic nervous system that has two branches. One branch is called sympathetic nervous system, and that part deals with the stress response. This is what they call the fight or flight response. And according to research, 60 to 80% of the human population on this planet lives in this state. The sympathetic nervous system is always in high REM. It's all because we all live stressed. Why are we living stressed? Not because of what's going on in the world, but what's going on in the world that we don't like is because we have lost our place. And collectively, we are seeing the outcome of it. So collectively or individually, we'll see it in ourselves as sickness and disease, relational issues, lack of finances, struggles in life otherwise. Collectively, the world seems like it's going crazy, but this is the answer for everybody to come right back here. But when the sympathetic nervous system is activated by chronic stress, it leads to every type of lifestyle disease. This is all medically documented, which is why the greatest of these medical authorities says that 90% of visits to a doctor's office is all for stress-related issues. It just manifests in different ways based on the nature of the stresses, etc. But chronic stress, everybody knows it promotes inflammation, which is the root cause. There's no disease that develops in your body without inflammation. But chronic stress, it affects one of the most important systems in your body, your digestive system. It creates DNA damage, that's genetic alterations, premature aging, all types of disease. When this sympathetic, that's one side of our central nervous system. This is all, and we have a lot of technology today, and a lot of, even with AI tech, you can do your research and see how when the sympathetic nervous system is activated by chronic stress, what goes on, and it just happens over time. So that's one side of the autonomic nervous system. The other side is the parasympathetic nervous system, and this side deals with healing and recovery. When the PNS is activated, when there is mind-body coherence, when there's harmony between mind and body, when there's that sense of inner peace, which comes from being more authentic, it restores homeostasis to the body. It optimizes immune function, cellular repair, and it synchronizes coordination between all biological systems. This is the system that initiates the healing response in your body automatically. You don't need to do anything to it. It does it automatically, provided that this is the system that's activated. How many people? If we were to go by research, 10 to 20% of people, they tend to live more on this side. 80% to 90% of people live on the other side because we live very stressed lives. Now, here's where the rubber meets the road. The function of the central nervous system is measured by brainwave activity. This is how we could tell, this is where neurology and neuroscience can now have all kinds of ways of the EEGs and the MEGs to be able to see what state of being a person is living in and what centers of the brain and body are being affected by how the nervous system is functioning. So when the sympathetic nervous system, the stress, fight, flight, the brainwave activity is high and it reflects low vibrational frequencies of thoughts and emotions, meaning fear, worry, guilt. These emotions that come along with being stressed, they carry very low vibrational frequencies. Your brain activity, the brain waves are high, but the frequency that they're reading are low vibrational frequencies. Why is that important? Remember, the frequency, when frequencies are high, it's more consistent with harmony, order. When frequencies are low, it's consistent with chaotic and disorder. That's important to realize. So when you measure brain waves, we are going to see in the EEG that you have high beta waves when you're stressed. The sympathetic system is active, the beta waves are high, but it's reflecting low vibrational energies coming from your consciousness or coming from your mind because the brain waves are reflecting the activity of the mind. And when it is stressed, stressful thoughts, stressful emotions, they're carrying very low vibrations. And why is that important? Because it is now lowering the vibrations of every cell, every organ, and every tissue. And that's what cascades over time into illnesses. On the other side, when the parasympathetic nervous system is active, which means that you're in a state of peace and coherence and balance, the brainwave activities are low, which is reflected high frequency thoughts and emotions. So you understand now, scientifically, we can understand why stress creates so much illness in the body and why a person who lives in a state of peace and balance can be exposed to a lot of things and don't get sick. And they can go on to live long and disease free. It is not normal that as we get older, we're supposed to develop a lifestyle disease, suffer from it, and die from it, which according to the World Health Organization is 75% of the people on the planet. Normal is you live until you die without a disease. That's normal. You live until whenever you die without a disease. And so we can now, through brainwave activity, get to see where we are and get to be able to change it. So we get to know that disease does not happen to us. Disease happens through us. And that's important for us to really capture that. See, the condition of the body is determined by the spiritual life that animates it, that courses through it, that vibrates through it. When it's free and it's clear and it's coming from the inside out, it's harmony, it's balance, it's function, it's energy, it's vitality, it's healing. Healing is not something you have to initiate. Healing is not something you have to activate. Healing is a natural process of involution. It's part of the unfolding of invisible into visible. It is why when you get cut, it will heal. When you break a bone, it would mend. It never stops. It's a continuous process. And it happens even when we're out of balance. But there's a point where it will not heal. Like when we get what they call terminal or life-threatening illnesses. But when we keep things in balance, when we reorder the flow, and it's no longer from outside in, but we are now living from the qualities of our inner nature. To reverse the effects of stress-induced disease, we must align our thoughts, emotions with truth. They must be one frequency. How we think, how we speak, and how we act must be one and the same. It must carry one singular frequency. We can't think one way and speak another way. That's fracturing. So you understand? It's about being coherent. It's about it's integrity of your being. So to reverse it, we have to come back to a place of aligning our whole function from inside out. We have to shift brainwave patterns from high beta states, active, to becoming more calm, alpha, theta states. Now, through meditation, deep breathing, there are all kinds of different ways we can do it. But we have to activate our parasympathetic nervous system, which is running our bodies. We need to keep that one more active. And that happens when we can live from our most authentic self. I'm giving us today a perspective of what true health and real healing really comes from. Now, that's not to say we don't use things and other modalities as methods along the way, which I certainly recommend that we do, but not to lean on that as the source of our healing or our wellness. That is to support the process while we engage our mind-body integration to align with our spiritual source and essence, that life will flow from inside out. And it's all based on living by truth. It's as simple as that. We just have to unpack that and understand that. And that's all part of the workshop material. And so the world needs this new approach to mind-body harmony. If we can bring that mind and body that flows from consciousness into body, all that's running our physical well-being, if we can bring that back into harmony, if we can bring that back into alignment, so the essence of our being will flow up and emanate, and our potential to live and vibrate and heal at our highest level, that will begin to emanate if we could begin to do that. And this is where I'm going to talk about the technology now, because I found this guy, I was introduced to this man, Jay Dhaliwal, who I mentioned in the beginning. He on a quest to try and help his mother's condition, multiple sclerosis. It's a neurodegenerative condition that there's no medical cure for. And from the time he was a young teenager, he's watched her suffer with that, and she was given X amount of time to live. As he became a man and became very successful and made a big fortune, he traveled the world trying to find a solution, working with the greatest of the minds in neuroscience. And he was just told one thing: for one reason, the signal is not getting from the brain to the muscles. And so there's going to be a deterioration, and one day she won't be able to walk, and then one day she's going to go. Because why? And when he asked, as a software engineer, he asked the question: what's preventing the signal from going from the brain to the body? And they had no answers to, for some reason, which we don't understand, the signals is not clearly getting to the body. That set him on a quest, which ended up being 15 years of research and development, of developing a simple technology that harnesses mind and body back into their normal balance, which is incredible. Because to be able to bring that type of balance back, when you can bring mind and body back into harmony, and what you're doing is reordering the flow. It is the one step towards reordering the flow. Guess what happens when mind and body comes into balance? The parasympathetic nervous system starts coming online more. What happens when that happens? You start to feel better in your body. Things start becoming more coordinated, because that's the natural response. Your body starts functioning better. You start feeling better. Your vitality starts to increase. But it's not the technology that's doing it. It is the body's natural state when balance and homeostasis comes back in stream, when mind and body realign, that the qualities of our spiritual nature can now flow through. That is not. This I found in my 30 years in the healthcare arena and 25 years in clinical practice. I have not found anything. Not only is it so simple, but so profoundly powerful in bringing our well-being back into alignment that affects two things. Our bodies begin to function better, but more importantly, our minds begin to function more orderly. Now that is transformational. That is transformational beyond anything that I've seen so far. Here's Mr. Dhaliwal doing an experiment with an EEG with this technology.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jay Dhaliwal. I'm the CEO and founder of Vox Life and the creator of Vox Life HPT. Today, I want to talk to you about a Harmony Neuro Patch. And what this product does is actually stimulates receptors on our skin, sending a neurosignal to our brain to help it reach homeostasis. This is the only product in the world that relies on the neurohaptic system that every single one of us has to optimize our neurology and optimize our health. Today, with the help of Dr. Mark DeBrinket, our VP of Clinical Strategy, we're going to be using an FDA-cleared 19-channel EEG headset, as well as FDA-cleared software to visualize, record, and show the impact that our technology has on our neurology and our brains to help it reach optimal performance. What we want to show today is how the Harmony Neuro Patch helps that dysregulated yellow, blue, and red colors in the brain maps transform into that healthy green homeostasis neurology that is the foundation of health and wellness. So what we're looking at right now is a neurological QEEG output of Mike's limbic system. The 19 channels are reading over 60,000 brainwaves a second and generating an output of neurofunction and brainwaves. What we want to see now is where that suboptimal red and yellow colors are. We want to see them turning as much as possible to a healthy green with the application of our HPT patch. So we've applied the patch now to Mike's arm, and within 10 seconds, you're seeing that predominant yellow and red become predominantly green. Just for clarification, ladies and gentlemen, there's nothing in the world that has this output at this rate of speed without drugs without chemicals, without electricity. That's the power of Vox HPT. So when we see a healthy green neurology, what we're looking at is a brain and a mind in homeostasis. It is operating in its optimal function. And this is so important. And this is why it's so important. So VoxLife HPT, as we demonstrated with our NeuroPatch, helps the central nervous system reach homeostasis in our neurology. And the reason this is so important for overall wellness and health is that neurology is the top of the pyramid of our physiological health and wellness paradigm. First is neurology at the very top, then there's chemistry, then there's biology, then there's physics and mechanics. Neurology will have an impact all the way through our entire physiology. Healthy neurology, healthy body, better wellness.
The technology, let me just briefly go back to the experiment that he did. For those, if there's anyone on the call that may be familiar with brain wave activity and brain scans, you know that yellow and red and those orange colors are usually indicative of brainwave activity that's more erratic, that's more restless, and more incoherent. Whereas the green is more coherent, more orderly functioning, more synchronized brain waves. But when we understand that the brain wave are a reflection of the activity of the mind, it is how consciousness, which is our inner energy that flows from the inside out, it is how that is being influenced. So understand, when there is stress, thoughts and emotions that are being influenced and our minds are crazy and our emotional responses, when that is our brain wave activity is going to be very erratic because it's low frequency. Anything that deals with fear, worry, anxiety, frustration, repressing traumas, they're all low frequency. They're erratic brain waves. Now, what that does is that prevents the natural process, the natural flow of healing that streams right into the body. Remember, it is the central nervous system that is running everything in perfect order. But when the signals are not streaming through, it is pretty much like a radio station that's not properly dialed in and there is static and you're getting. That is what stress is. Stress is like the static that hinders the frequency, the clear signals. So imagine that when you put this patch on, and I'll explain the technology, how simple it is. When you put that patch on, it synchronizes the brain reactivity so that now signals can stream very clearly into your body. The process, the result is what was not functioning optimally now begins to function more optimally. And so if there's something that needed to be repaired, your body, which heals and repairs itself, starts doing its job. Not the patch doing it, the body doing it. The patch is just streamlining and synchronizing the brain waves so that signaling is clear and clean, that we're properly dialed in to the station, so to speak. And so understand that our brainwave activity is reflecting our state of being. Whether that state of being is being defined by our inner well-being flowing inside out, or whether that state of being is being defined by an inverted flow from the outside in. The difference between sympathetic and parasympathetic function, the difference between a coherent, peaceful disposition or a stressful one, even though you may be sitting quiet and think that you're not stressed, subconsciously, there's a lot of activity. When we do brainwave scans, there's a lot of erratic function going on in the brain. And so to understand the technology and how it works, I'm just going to go straight to, if you know what Braille is, well, I believe all of us will know that those raised dots on a surface that blind persons use to read. Braille are arranged in what they call tactile patterns. We already know, and we already know that everything carries a vibration. every atom in the human body and every atom in all matter carries a measurable vibrational frequency. We have technology that measures all these things today. When it comes to take Braille, for example, when the dots are arranged in tactile patterns and a blind person put their fingers on the dots, there are channels within the skin. You can see it here. They're called piezo ion channels. They detect and convert the vibration of whatever you're touching into signals that goes to the brain. So a blind person knows that the pattern they're touching, if it's an A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, or a symbol, or whatever it is that they're touching, because of the pattern, the vibration of the pattern. This is, in essence, how the super patches work. No medicines, no chemicals. All it is that when you put the patch on the skin, the patch carries a tactile pattern on it. And the pattern sends a signal to everything that touches your skin, sends a signal to your brain. Anything that touches your skin will do that. But the pattern is arranged in such a way that the signal that is sending is the very signal that is needed to synchronize particular brain waves to affect a particular outcome. What is proprietary to SuperPatch, based on their years of research and development, is through understanding neurological and neuroscience coding that a particular function of the body requires a particular synchronizing of brain waves. If those brain waves are not properly synchronized, they can now introduce the signal that is needed to synchronize it. SuperPatch has been able to determine what pattern will carry that frequency to synchronize. That's what's proprietary to them, and that was 15 years of research and development. So you stick the patch anywhere on your skin, it sends a signal. It's called vibrotactile technology. It has become, after 15 years of research, peer-reviewed and published research in some of the major medical and lifestyle journals around the world. How now, and it's beginning to attract attention from major symposiums around the world where the greatest of the minds come together to look at the future of health and wellness. And SuperPatches, last year they were invited to some of these major symposiums to present this technology, which was blowing people's minds that you're not introducing anything into the body, but yet you're affecting biological change, but not understanding that it's not the patch affecting biological change, it is the body doing what it is naturally designed to do when it's in harmony and when it's in balance. And so you're looking at bona fide, very established research today. So this is unlocking the potential within. The body naturally will do what it naturally does when things flow from inside out. The patches just help to bridge the gap while we engage the process of nurturing and cultivating our best life. So when the mind and body are harmonized through brainwave synchronization, biological functions become optimized and the mind becomes more attuned. As their functions become more coordinated, homeostasis returns. Healing is a natural response. It does not have to be initiated. The body is perpetually in a state of healing. And if there's something wrong that's not being healed, the signals are being blocked one way or the other. In something in our, and is what we want to do is shift from sympathetic nervous function to parasympathetic function, where the moving from fight and flight to healing and recovery. It's all a natural process. I've not seen anything more natural than this. SuperPatch has come up with 13 ways of delivering the right signals and the right frequencies to synchronize brainwave activity that is associated with 12 different types of functions in the body. And how they work is just absolutely amazing. They're mind-body solutions that we all need. The thing is, they're not just enhancing physical well-being, which is a natural response, they're enhancing mental well-being as well. They are 100% drug-free. They're FDA registered, not approved, because there's nothing to ingest or nothing that goes into the body, but they're registered as safe for human use. They're backed by research, it's proven by science, and it's addressing the most common needs in health and wellness and lifestyle performance. I want to emphasize that while people are very attracted to this because of how they work and how quickly they work in terms of relieving some of these symptoms, I just want to remind us that our perception of how we've been taught to think about health and healing, that we keep that open and understand that when
Can we see this again?
we put the patch on, it is not the patch that's doing it, it is the body doing it. The patch is realigning and synchronizing brainwave activity so that mind and body becomes more aligned, and the natural process that flows from inside out emanates.
You're gonna read that book?
We
Holy
have
Fire.
thousands of testimonies on our
Right now.
page, which I'll tell you about. Can you mute your mic, please? So there's no need for contraindications, which is one in terms of a wellness tool. If you're on any type of medication, you don't have any concerns about contraindications because there's no ingredients, there's no allergic reactions. It's completely safe. You just patch and you just live. It's safe, again, because of no ingredients. Little children can take it, elderly can take it, and it's safe for everyone. So when you talk about a healthy neurology, or you talk about optimizing mind-body function, this is the key to homeostasis. This is key to disease prevention. This is key to optimizing our physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. This is a bridge to crossing that river of transformation where we can now engage life at a completely different level. People that use these patches, and I can attest to it, my wife can attest to it, numerous people that I have shared this with can attest to it, that when you have used these patches consistently over time, not only are you going to see increasing improvements in your physical well-being, but you begin to notice how your mental well-being begins to shift. You're going to notice how your disposition begins to shift. You're going to notice that once before, let's say you would get anxious when you have an event coming up, or you have to present and you're feeling, you're late on a project, and you'll notice that you're not feeling that anxiety anymore. You'll notice that your decision making has become more astute and more clear. There's more clarity in your thinking, more clarity in your decision making. Your mind starts to function more orderly. You're feeling less stress when you're caught in traffic. And you're just wondering what's happening. It's because not just body is functioning better, but mind is functioning better. What does this mean? This means that you can now cross that river of reordering the flow. You can now turn the boat around. We can now engage a process, because this is the process of renewing the mind, which is not the most simplest thing to do. People find it difficult to be able to engage, to renew, to change mindsets, to change habits, to change our thought processes that have worked against us. We find it difficult to be able to renew that. Now, it's not that difficult, because now we are going more with the flow, less resistance, and not going against the current as much as you might have been doing before. So the super patches, just to run through some of them, run through them briefly, you can take a snapshot of them. This is the one that Jay demonstrated with the EEG. This one is the foundational one. This is absolutely, I say to people that a lot of these patches, you don't use them just because you may have a symptom in your body. You use them as part of your daily accessories, because when it starts to synchronize brainwave activity and mind and body becomes streamlined, yes, you'll feel better, and in time your mentality begins to shift. But what's happening is that your brain is now dismantling the old pathways and networks from the habits you had, and it's now rewiring itself. It's now retraining itself and rewiring new synaptic connections to the new balance. That becomes very life-changing and it only happens through consistency of use over time. Because like anything else, your body takes time to heal and repair, and the brain will rewire and heal itself and retrain itself to this new balance of these patches. People who have issues sleeping and your circadian rhythms are off and you're having the REM patch, this is so wonderful. This is so key. This is not just for people who have insomnia issues, but many of us, most of the planet, in fact, have issues sleeping and they may not even be aware of it. But to get deep restorative sleep, which is where regeneration, repair, healing, replenishing, restoration takes place, most of us don't get very deep REM sleep. And the peace patch is one of my favorites, which is for stress. This keeps the autonomic nervous system, which has the two branches, parasympathetic and the sympathetic. This keeps that system better regulated. This is something that you don't do without, because the world that we live in today, it is very easy to be in a sympathetic mode. Very easy with all that's going on. And we have to go through a process. It takes us time to go through a process of retraining and cultivating our lives to where we can be more centered and where we can live more from our spiritual center. That's a process of time. But something like the peace patch helps to keep our autonomic nervous system balanced. So over time of taking this is where you begin to find that I don't get anxious like before, and you can't really tell why because you did nothing really different, but it's just that your autonomic nervous system is more balanced and more regulated, and your brain has become rewired more to that because you've been using this over time. The defend patch, I have not come across anything in my years of clinical practice that enhances and optimizes immune function more than this defend patch. And because it's neurology straight to biology, it works pretty quickly. Pain, and this is not masking pain, this is removing the source of pain. This is reducing the inflammation, the stiffness. This is people, and imagine making life more comfortable and pain-free. And with some people, it happens in seconds, some people in minutes, some people in hours, some people in days. It depends on the nature of the person's issue and all that they may have going on with them. But very effective in removing and reducing pain. But it's important to know this is not masking the pain like medicine does. This is relieving the pain at its very source. A very, invaluable patch is this one called joy. And joy is not just for when you're feeling depressed or you're in a very low place in your mood and you need a pick-me-up and you want to feel better and more optimistic. Joy will do that. But joy is not just a patch you can take or should take just because you're feeling low. Joy regulates the centers of your brain. If you did an EEG scan with somebody who is in a transcendent, blissful, euphoric state, the centers of the brain that light up, that connects us with our spirituality when we're in that state of transcendence, joy taps into that part of the brain and synchronizes with it. That helps us to connect to our spiritual centers, which are recorded in the brain. So for me, this is not something you just take. This is something that you take on a daily basis to stay tapped in to your source. For those of us who are athletic, into sports, or just like to make sure we have a good workout in the gym, the victory, this works so well to enhance your sports performance on multiple levels. This is a very invaluable patch. Focus, not just for cognitive decline, not just for concentration and memory and enhancing our cognitive abilities. Yes, it's going to do that. But as it synchronizes the pathways of your brain that deals with these cognitive enhancements, you don't need to have issues to take it. This will help to retrain your brain to ensure that you don't end up down the road with a cognitive decline issues. For those of us wanting to get off those extra pounds and we want to burn more calories, we can't get the activity in because of our schedule. This will help to burn 300 as much as 500 calories extra in a day just by enhancing internal consumption of energy. So this is increasing your metabolic rate while you're at rest. And of course, you want clean energy. You don't want the toxicity of energy drinks and overloaded on caffeine and so on. This is energy on demand. This is clean energy coming from the inside out. Beautiful skin, clean skin, various skin issues that you may have. I want to say that while these help people with all different types of skin issues, and please let me emphasize, these patches are not for the symptoms. They are not for any particular illness or condition. These patches target, this, for example, will target the health of the skin by synchronizing the parts of the brain that's responsible for your skin health. The body will naturally do what it's supposed to do when those brain wave activity, when those centers of the brain responsible for skin health are well balanced. It just naturally happens. And that's the wonderful thing about it. This patch called Kick It, you want to take back control over your life, not just for addictions, whether it be food addictions or a substance addiction, but people have addictions and they don't even aware of it. They have addictions of overthinking. They have addictions to fear. They have addictions to worry. Some people, they don't have enough to worry about, they worry about that. So this, when you take these addictions, which are emotionally encoded in your brain, Kick It helps to regulate those centers of your brain, and where you don't feel that compulsive nature, that compulsive pull to have to engage in, it calms it right down. So again, what I'm saying, it's helping to turn the boat around. You don't have the resistance. Now you can engage nurturing and the cultivation of, because our key is we want to get back to our standard. We want to get back to the place, not because we just want to feel better in our bodies. We want every area of our life to come back online and to be at its optimal best. Our relationships, our finances, everything else. For us men, as we get older, we tend to get a decline in our masculine function. This will help to skyrocket you back there. And then there's ways how you can use the various patches in combination to get more synchronizing power from them to affect even greater changes in certain areas of your life, particularly as it relates to bringing our brain waves down to more theta and delta levels, which is more where we are when we are spiritually aligned. So you can learn about how you can do that. We use the patches. Very simple to use. Peel it off, stick it on your skin. Each patch lasts 24 hours. They're all safe. They're all the 3M material. It's all medical 3M material. It's supported by a medical advisory board. These are very brilliant people who are accomplished in their own right. They all have scientific papers that are published. They work with the research and development team in the real world application, and they actually have clinical trials going on right now on different patches, and the company has in research and development now some amazing new patches that will be coming out in the near future that is absolutely mind-blowing. So if you want to look at getting your health, but more so your life, in a better place of balance, where you are functioning more optimally, not just physically and mentally, but emotionally and even spiritually as well, because you are one whole being. No one area can be optimized independently. They all must be worked on simultaneously for us to come back to the place that we are designed and meant to function from. So get aligned, try and see what it's going to do for you. You need to experience it. You can also go onto our Patch and Go Facebook page, and you'll see that there's thousands of testimonies of people all over the world of how it's impacting lives. And so I'm going to say thank you, and I'm going to end right here. If you want to start not just feeling better, thinking better, and living better, I don't know of anything simpler that you can apply to your body that is so safe, so non-invasive, uh, without any kind of contraindications or allergic responses, that has such an impact, not just on your body, but on your entire well-being. And so Jay said he wants to create something generational that will change the world. I think that he's on to something, because to change the world, you got to change lives at a very fundamental level that will change well-being. And this actually can do that. And with what he has coming up for the near future that they have in research and development, then even more so. So I want to thank you for taking your time, for being here this evening. For those of you who may have an interest in building, because SuperPatch also offers an opportunity for people who may be looking, they spread this the way how I'm telling it to you, and they spread it by word of mouth, which is the best way. This is too valuable to sell through a brick and mortar. But they have an opportunity for those who might be interested in it. So maybe not be for everybody, but if you have an interest, we talk a little bit about that on Monday evening, and we explain how that works for those of you who may have an interest in that. So I'm going to say thank you very, very much for taking the time, for being on this evening, giving me the opportunity to share this information with you. I want to thank you for sitting in there, hanging in there, and being patient with all the information. You may feel free to request a copy of the video. You may want to go back through. You may want to do some of your own research on it. Feel free to request a copy of it, and I'll be happy to send that to you. So with that, I'm going to say good night. Wish you all God's best. God bless all of you. Good night.